Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Coach Krisler's Convos. Forgive me, it's Monday, y'all. And I am here with Brigett, and I am going to turn it over to her to let her tell us who she is, where she's from, and tell us a little bit about what you do, Brigett.
Yeah, thank you, Krisler. Thank you for having me in here today. I'm really excited. So, I am Brigett Buice. I am a mom of three teens. One is actually in college, so fastly approaching not being a teen, but mom of three teens. And I live in Alabama. So, if you cannot hear yet my Southern accent, I'm sure it will come through at some point. Born and raised in the South, but I tell people I do get out. I love to travel, have traveled to all of the states in the eastern US and several in the western US, and hoping to complete all 50 at some point. That's on my bucket list. Um, but yeah, so from Alabama, and my background is actually in education. I have a master's in math ed. So I'm a teacher just by trade, and that is my heart, a speaker, and have used that to kind of be the foundation. And now I am still teaching and speaking, but I'm a faith-based stress and nutrition coach now. So doing a lot of wellness coaching and those kind of things now. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, I guess.
Yeah, so that's something that we have in common with the teaching background. So I am still in education and higher ed specifically. But yeah, that has been my primary career. So love teaching. I love working with young people. And that's really where my heart is for coaching as well.
Yeah, yeah, I find that as well. I love working with young people. And I see the difference between teaching and education versus coaching, but I see the overlap as well. And I've loved how I've been able to use the coaching skills, not just with my own kids, which has been very helpful at times, but even with
Absolutely.
in the classroom, and just being able to kind of draw out some things from the kids that I didn't have those abilities and skills to do before I became a coach. So I really love how the two can go hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. One of my favorite things about teaching college students is office hours. I love being in the classroom. I love my discipline, but when I can get a student one on one and have that conversation with them,
Yeah.
it's gold.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about why you have chosen health coaching and to, kind of go in that direction with what you're doing in your work.
Yeah, absolutely. So my story started back when I was in high school. I have been an athlete for as long as I can remember, very involved in sports, so very into that fitness area and loved all that. But back then, nutrition was not very prominent or key. And while I'm very thankful that my mom was very much into alternative medicine as much as there was available back then. But I had a lot of health issues as far as digestive issues. So when I got into high school, just had a lot of digestive issues in that I would eat foods and never really realized what the triggers were. My mom had taken me to an allergist, and one allergist said I was allergic to everything. Another allergist said that it was just environmental things. Um, but we never really could narrow it down to certain things. And again, this was before we even knew as much as we do about a lot of those, um, like dairy and gluten and a lot of these foods that we now know so much about. And I think it was even before there was as much chemicals and toxicity put into them. Um, but it was just I would eat foods and I would get sick. I would run to the bathroom, and so it got to the point where I wouldn't want to eat because I knew after taking one bite of food, I was going to be sick. And as a high school teenager, I mean, that's not fun. And so I would go for a couple days, just barely eating. And my mom was like, okay, I've got to take you to the doctor. We've got to find out what's going on. And she had had a lot of digestive issues as well. had had some endometriosis, had to actually have part of her colon removed. So she had gone through a lot herself and didn't want me to have to go through that, especially as much of the surgeries and those kind of things. She wanted things that,
Hmm.
weren't so intense if possible. And so she took me to the doctor that she had found and liked. And he just said I had a spastic colon, gave me some pills, said I'd probably grow out of it. And that was that. And the pills did help some. And as I got a little older, it did get better, to where it was more manageable, I would
Hmm.
say. It never really went away. But then I had children and
Oh yeah,
I noticed
that changes. That brings on a
everything
whole other
changed.
set.
I know, right? It was like a whole other, everything happened. My body totally changed. And after my third child, my son, I noticed that it was back in full force. And at this point, I had three young children. So I had let's see, I had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a newborn. So, you know, very young children. And I was like, I can't be chained to the bathroom and I can't be running to the bathroom. I have kids. Like this is
Hmm.
not going to work. So really started diving into what I could do. And at that point, I had already begun looking into um, herbs and some other alternatives instead of just taking some medication because of just the background and some of the things that my mom had done in the past and just being open to that. And I had kind of gone from just the conventional pharmacy to the green pharmacy, which I think is a step in the right direction, but I still wasn't on that functional medicine level
Hmm.
yet. And so was trying to find some things that would help and met a lady who became a good friend and mentor. She was a naturopath. And so really started learning a lot of things from her and learning how much food and nutrition played a part in our diet. And so began changing some things and noticed a huge difference in myself. And ironically, I remember at some point before this, even going to my local doctor and asking him, is there something I can do to improve my immune system, improve my health? And he was like, no, there's not really anything. It kind of is what it is. And I look back now and I'm just like, oh, like
Oh
I knew
man.
in my heart that that was
Hmm.
not right. I was like, there has to be something. But, he was the
How
expert and he was like,
deflating to hear
it
that.
is.
No, there's nothing you can do. Just kind of suffer through it. And
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, I would read these magazine articles or, this was before the internet became so accessible, but I would get my hands on different things and read some of these alternative medicines and studies and things that were being put out. And I was like, that can't be right. There has to be something that we can do to
Hmm.
improve where we are now. And so again, fast forward up to that point where I met that friend and mentor and started learning and really saw the difference in just changing our diet and how much that improved
Hmm.
my health. I realized a lot of my triggers and pretty much eliminated everything I was going through unless I really went off the deep end and ate kind of crazy. But I knew what was going to happen and I got my body to where I could eat foods and I knew if I ate a certain thing it was going to trigger me, but I knew how to manage it and I knew like this was not, I could never eat out again. This was, I need to build my body up so that, when I do want to enjoy a treat or something, I can. If I'm eating out with friends or whatever, I know I can do that and I know how to do that now. And so it wasn't about really giving up things, it was learning how to incorporate things that I enjoyed in a way that was manageable.
Hmm.
Um, so continued with that. And I noticed my middle daughter began complaining about stomach issues. And at this point, she was so young, I didn't want to do a lot of invasive testing and stuff because I was like, that is so hard and traumatic. I don't even want to go through it. I don't want to put my, 2 or 3-year-old through it. And she's so young that she just keeps saying her stomach hurts, but she doesn't really have a way and know how to verbalize what is going on. So
Hmm.
kind of started diving in again and really learning more about nutrition and health. And we started changing some things up again. And this time, not just removing foods, but actually incorporating foods that would heal our gut and heal our digestion. And that made such a difference in all of us, to the point that she had started exhibiting some over or hypersensitivities to some things.
Mhm.
And I noticed that as we went through that process, that those went away. And it wasn't
Mhm.
even something I was trying to accomplish, but I just
Mhm.
noticed, I was like, she doesn't do that anymore. And so
Mhm.
I think that's when that transition to functional medicine kind of really kicked in, of like, this is all related. Like,
Mhm.
it's not just about eating good so I feel good. I mean, the foods we eat, the things that we do, the activities, I mean, it all plays so much of a role in our health, in our mental health, in our emotional. I mean, just, it is so all tied together. So
Yeah. Yeah.
from from that point, I started looking into options of trying to find a functional medicine practitioner, which, again, at that point, it was still a relatively new concept. And even still today, in Alabama, there are not many of those. So, I feel like there are certain areas of the country, certain pockets, that it's really hard to find functional
Mhm.
medicine practitioners. And so, but I did find one, and it was amazing just going to someone who wanted to listen to you and wanted to hear your story and really wanted to hear all the different things that could impact your health, and actually asked you questions about the
Yeah.
things that would impact your health that you didn't even think of, like, where do you live, and the things that are in your house and your
Mhm.
environment. And I mean, just all the things. So it was so encouraging and so even empowering to know that what I'm doing is correct. Like, she's validating, what I kind of knew in my gut and knew in my heart, and the things that we're doing. And now there's this medical professional who's saying, yes, this is right, and this is why it's working. And so that was amazing, being able to find her. So we kind of went through that, and we're doing good. And then it was kind of that next level. I feel like as you get into functional medicine and you begin learning about it, I kind of feel like it's like a process, almost like peeling back layers of an onion as
Oh,
you're
absolutely.
learning, you know. And so
Yeah.
my
And it's
son
almost
then
like it's almost like it makes you hungry for more.
mm,
If you learn something and you're like, wow, that's really cool. How does that work? I want to know more. I want to find out more about this, and you talk to people and you listen to podcasts and you read an article or read a book, and it's like you just can't get enough.
yes, absolutely. It's like the more I learn, the more I know I don't know, and I'll want to know.
Hmm.
So, yes, it's like, am I ever gonna feel smart? Because the more I learn, the more I realize I need to know so much more. But yeah, so, that's kind of where I was. I started diving in head first to that. At that point, I was actually homeschooling my kids. And so that really gave me an open door to begin learning for myself, but also teaching my kids of taking responsibility and ownership of their health and learning how to dive
Hmm.
into things. Um, and so we got to a point where we were doing really good. And then my son had all of a sudden this breakout on his face. And at this point, he was about, 5 or 6 years old. So he was still really young. And it came up pretty quickly. We had noticed something like this before and had gotten it to go away, but we were doing karate. Me and my children were doing karate. My son was testing for his black belt, and it's a pretty intense test.
Hmm.
The way the way ours was structured, it was at a camp basically, so we would go away for the weekend. He would test and do all of his testing and stuff on a Friday night, and then on Saturday we would have the camp. So all day Saturday we were doing karate all day long. Um, so a lot of stress physically, mentally. I mean, it's, just a lot going on. And so we had gone to this. It was actually in Florida. It was in the winter, but we had been outside in the sun and in the wind. And so we had all gotten some sunburn because we didn't really think in winter about,
Mm-hmm.
using sunscreen. We should have, but we didn't. Um, and so we come back and we all, have a little bit of red face. Well, as his starts going away, that's when we noticed that his face was breaking out again. And at that point, I think it was because it had already started and had gotten so bad before we realized what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But also just the stress and stuff. So I take him to the doctor because at this point, it is literally covering half of his face. Like it is very noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
His face is starting to swell. And so, I'm concerned because it's his face and, he doesn't have trouble breathing or anything. But as a mom, I'm like, what is
Yeah.
going on with my son? So I take him to his doctor, who I really appreciate his doctor. His doctor has been super supportive of not pushing a lot of traditional, or I say conventional medicines, and some natural or alternative things, or letting the body heal itself. But he was concerned as well, and no tests were done, though, no blood tests to check to see what was going on. It was just told that I was or that he had it was a fever blister that was really bad. And I was like, okay. Well, several days later, the doctor calls to check, and it still was not getting better. They had given us some antivirals, but I think by the time we got it was past the initial stage anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm doing some other natural things to try to put on it, trying to do things. And at this point, it's like, well, I think we need to put him in the hospital and do IV antibiotics. And I'm like, whoa, hold up. Like, nobody has even done a blood test on him. You haven't even done a
Right.
skin test. Like, how do you even know that
What this
antibiotics
is.
are going to
Yeah.
help? Especially
Mm-hmm.
if it's a fever blister that's viral. It's like, I know enough to know that, like, why are we jumping to this? And so I was very scared, but at the same time, I was kind of angry that, like,
Mm-hmm.
why do we have to jump to this extreme? And I'm trying to push to, like, can we not test this to see what's going on, to make sure? And we ended up going to a bigger hospital in a larger town, to their children's ER department, to have it tested, and still no blood test was done. They kind of told us the same thing. Through that process, I'm still diving in, trying to find anything I can to help
Mm-hmm.
him. Like praying, just all the things that you do as a
Yeah.
mom when your kid is suffering. And so um at one point I was like, okay, this is going to sound maybe crazy to some people, but I was like, why am I not still breastfeeding? Because I would be putting that on him. And I remembered I had a friend who had a baby, and good friend. And I was like, do you have extra? She was like, yeah, got some in the freezer. I was like, can I please have some? And she was like, absolutely. So at that point, I didn't tell my son what I was doing, but I mixed it in with some other stuff and put it on there the night before we were headed to the ER. And by the time we got to the ER the next day, the swelling was starting to go down and it looked remarkably better. Like, I had
Mm-hmm.
pictures, I was documenting everything. And I was like, okay, like, praise the Lord, it is better. But, we're going to go through the process and we're going to, like, let them see. And, they agreed that it looked better. And that they said again that it was still just a fever blister,
Yeah.
and still no tests were done, though. And so, we were just kind of sent away like, okay, it's getting better. You're good. Well, I went ahead and tried to schedule an appointment with a dermatologist,
Mm-hmm.
and our functional medicine doctor, because I'm like, okay, there is something going on that is causing
Mm-hmm.
this. I know that this is rooted in his gut. This is beyond just his skin. And I need somebody that will work with me to try to figure out what's going on so that this doesn't happen again. And so we were able to get in with an the allergist, and they did test and found that he did have the herpes antibodies. So we pretty much confirmed that that was what had happened. But my thing was, okay, I've had a fever blister before, but at 6 years old, what has caused it to
Hmm.
explode on his face like this? And like, we need to get this under control. This is not something at 6 that he needs to continue dealing with for the rest of his
Right.
life.
Right.
So finally got into the functional medicine doctor. And again, it was confirmed that, like, yes, we do think this is in the gut and this is stress. This is what stress is doing to his body. The
Hmm.
stress of, from the sun and the skin, his skin being stressed from the
Right.
sunburn, but then just the stress of the test and the physical stress. And so that's kind of when I realized that last layer, so to speak, of how much stress affects your body. And
Yeah.
even at a young age of about 6, I was like, wow, I mean, this is crazy. A 6-year-old should not be stressed to to
Yeah.
this point,
Yeah.
right?
Not to that. Yeah. And
Right. So,
I bet there's a lot of people listening who get fever blisters when they are under an extensive amount of stress, right?
yes.
I'm actually thinking of a friend that I know that gets them. And yeah, she's like, yeah, I've been so stressed this week and, this popped up. And so it's not a crazy um, stretch to make that connection. But I think for conventional practices and conventional medicine, that's not where their mind goes. It goes more so to let's give this a medicine and kind of just follow this same protocol, and then we'll be fine and we'll just move on.
Right.
And that really highlights the difference with functional medicine is that it's very investigative. it
Mhm.
you know Functional medicine doctors are the bloodhounds of the
Right.
medical world, right? They
Yeah.
are going to sniff it out. And if they lose the scent, they're going to be like, okay, well, let's pick up another scent and let's go down this trail and look for what the answer really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that's, specifically with the fever blister, because typically for most people, they've experienced it before. It doesn't cover their entire face. It's more of a nuisance than anything else. So let's give some medicine. We know it's going to go away. Um, but my thing was, because his was so intense, like, we
Mhm.
need to figure out what's going on, because this is going to happen again. And that's where that functional medicine doctor really helped with, yes, like, his gut is inflamed. This should not be happening to this level. So what can we do? And interestingly enough, one of the supplements that she recommended was it was something that's also in breast milk. And I was like, oh, well, that would be why the breast milk help. And so, it's so interesting to me when you really start diving in and you look at these things. And again, it's just that, wow, that was really cool to know that's why this works. And
Mhm.
but again, just really focusing on that stress. And to this day, he's a teenager now, playing basketball and sports and getting stressed. And those are some of the things that we still watch with him, of like making sure that, like, okay, when you are getting stressed, we know what's going to happen if we're not careful. So we need to support your body. We need to support your gut and digestion. But the thing is we know how to do that now, which is,
Mhm.
so empowering to know.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's huge.
it
And
is.
so, what would you say in terms of your experience as a teen going through all of these issues, right, as a child and as an adolescent? Um, what would you say was beneficial for you now that you have teens, right? And
Yeah.
they've gone through some difficulties in their childhood with a variety of issues.
Yeah. So I think just going through it myself and being able to say that, like, I get what it's like to be a teen and have to deal with all the things of a teenager. and have health issues as well and have that on your mind. Um, and when you're a teen, as much as we sometimes think it as teens that we know it all, there are a lot of times when we really are scared because we don't know. And and that was one of the things, was thinking, is this going to last forever? Is this what the rest of my life is going to be like? Um and so being able to have been there and experienced that, on top of just the regular teen issues, but coming out and learning what I've learned. And so now being able to say, you know what? No, like there are things that you can do. I'm not going to say that you might, be healed and never experience this again, but there are probably 99% of the time things that you can do to improve your health so that this is not as bad. This doesn't happen as often. Your body can handle some of these things better. And so I think that's just the biggest thing of me going through it. And then my kids know that I've gone through it. So now that they're going through things, they do come to me and ask, like, what can I do about this? And they trust me as their mom, but they also trust me because they know I've been there and I get it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've found a way that works without, just putting a Band-Aid on the issue. I've really dug in to try to help, and they've seen in their own life how that has helped and how things
Mm-hmm.
that they've done have improved. And so they've even been able to make choices now. It's like, okay, I know I need to not do this, or I need to do more of this, because I want to feel better. So for me as a mom, that's probably the most empowering thing, of seeing that, I didn't get that opportunity because we didn't know, you don't know what you don't know. And so I couldn't feel better as a teen, but because of what I went through and have learned, my kids can, and they're already empowered so much more than I was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so did you notice, um, as you started to realize, okay, there's triggers, there's things that are going on, this isn't right. Did you start to notice that there were times, um, or there were certain things that were like, oh yeah, this is the thing, or this seems to be connected to my gut issues or why I'm not feeling well?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely, I feel like food was probably the first thing, and one of the easiest things to recognize, with that. And for me, it wasn't as much of some of the most common intolerances with dairy and gluten. It was more of the additives, which are a little bit
Mm,
more subtle because they're in so many things. But I did notice, especially when I would eat out or eat already prepared and processed foods, that's when I would notice the bulk of my issues, and especially eating certain things from certain places. And so kind of once I started looking through that and doing kind of that investigation, which maybe that's a little bit of my math mind. So maybe that's part of why I love that so much, of just that logic digging in. Um, but yeah, I would notice that, for sure. And then, so that's kind of where it started. But, I mentioned the stress with my son, and I've noticed so much more as I've really kind of gotten into this mindset of, looking at the problem, not just the symptoms. And I've noticed even more the stress and how stress affects me as well. Um, After, we kind of gone through all of that, um, kind of fast forward a little bit, and this is kind of what propelled me to even go into becoming a health and wellness coach, wanting to help others, seeing how much it has helped my family, myself. But then, I realized that the marriage that I was in was not very healthy. So went through separation and divorce. at the same time, I was going through my health coaching school and certification, which was quite a lot of stress, but it was actually a good thing because I was learning a lot of these tools and techniques that were helping me through that process. And so through that, I learned so much just about, relationships and having healthy, safe relationships and how much that impacts our health of having that network of people that are going to push us toward our goals. And, how much it also affects us when we have unhealthy relationships and just the stress in general of things we go through. So yeah, that is one of the things that I have seen lately that has impacted my health. And I've just seen, the stress and my, digestion being affected, my sleep being affected, my energy level being affected, and how when I can do things to manage that stress, it helps with, so many other areas because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we're so stressed that we can't even focus on trying to eat
Mm-hmm.
healthy and move right and do these other things. So I feel like that's such a foundational level. And even with the kids, and I know you mentioned working with kids, and you've probably seen this as well. Just in the last few years, it seems like there has been such an explosion of stressors for people, and people
Mm-hmm.
are way more stressed and talking about it and exhibiting that. It's I don't know if we have more stress on us or if we just aren't learning how to manage it as well, or maybe a little of both.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I'm seeing that not only in myself, but I'm seeing that in others of people are very stressed, and so they're not eating healthy and taking
It's a
care of their
domino
body.
effect, and
Right.
it
And
becomes
it's
this
just this
vicious
circle.
cycle.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
And so, it's kind of like some people come in at the stress level and they notice that, or some people come in at the food, but you do have to take care of both of them. And that's why I think I love the functional medicine, that viewpoint so much because it does take that holistic approach of
Mm-hmm.
looking at everything. And
Mm-hmm.
and so, with my health and wellness coaching that I do now, that's it's everything. We're looking at your mind, your body, your spirituality, like everything, because it is so interconnected.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I would wholeheartedly agree that being able to go through the program while you're just experiencing life, right? Whatever
Yes.
circumstances you're going through, you're in the program. And it was so beneficial for me as well to have people who were learning those concepts, who were practicing them, who were coaching me, as we practiced. But
Right.
still, I was receiving coaching for a
Yeah.
whole year. And it was so awesome because there were things that I experienced that, there were days where mine was an online program. And so
Mhm.
we'd get into our classroom and um, I'd slip a note to the facilitator, just saying, I've had a really hard day. I'm probably not going to be very talkative today. Or we'd get in our coaching triads and we'd be doing our thing. And I mean, the tears would come and, my coach would just engage with me in a very empathetic and understanding way, no judgment, just
Mhm.
talking with me and letting me, share what I needed to share. And it still was very um, health oriented, right? Because
Right.
it's all a part of it. So yeah, so that was an awesome benefit of going through the program.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that same thing. At one point I was kind of that struggle or tension of like, should I do this now? I don't know if this is the right time. It's going to be a lot, but I knew it was something I had been thinking about for several years. And I just felt like, okay, my kids are old enough now to where, I can do this because I don't have, no matter how old your kids get, they still need you. It's just in different ways, but they weren't
Mhm.
young and quite so needy in that sense that I could be able to do something. But knowing just kind of area of life that I was about to walk through. It was just kind of like, oh, is this right? But it was so perfect. It was a lot of work. But at
Hmm.
the same time, like you said, yes, I was learning to coach, but I was getting that coaching also. Um, Making friends with other classmates and getting able to talk to them and just kind of practice coaching and getting to share and yeah, learning just the techniques of coaching, but being able to do it myself. And I feel
Hmm.
like it has really given me so much more of a passion because I've seen, like, yeah, I learned this stuff, but I was doing it because I had to, because I had
Hmm.
to, it was my lifeline at that point. And it works. And so it really did empower me. But it really gave me a much more of a passion to do that as well. Just going through that process and learning all
Hmm.
of that
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you look at um, the stress management piece, what are some things, maybe like two things that you do to help mitigate stress? Because we all go through stress, whether it's negative stress like a divorce or positive stress, right? Like having a baby, whatever it
Right.
is, the stressors happen. Um, so, what are two things that you do that really help to mitigate that for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, probably my top two things. One, the very top one, because of just my beliefs and my faith, that has probably been the top thing. So having that time set aside to do and I'll do it different ways, but reading some scripture and having that time just to meditate on that and think through that, maybe doing some deep breathing with that. So will incorporate some different things in there, but having that moment of just kind of quiet, still reflection while meditating, reading scripture, just really solidifying my faith and those kind of things. So that's probably my top one. And then my other thing, because I am such a doer, I mentioned, I've been an athlete for as long as I can remember. And so I don't really like to sit a whole lot. And so movement and yoga has been my other one. And let's see, I started yoga, I don't even remember how long ago, but became a certified yoga instructor several years back. And that was one of the things that I really came to enjoy when the first yoga class I tried, I didn't really like it. I was like, okay, I'm going to fall asleep. And that was not what I was expecting. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that yoga doesn't have to put you to sleep, but there is that calming aspect to it.
Hmm.
Um, and so incorporating some movement and learning how to move while I breathe. And that's why I loved yoga, because it incorporates so much of that. And I'm learning as I'm getting older that my body needs more flexibility and movement as well. And as I have more aches and pains just from getting older, that slow movement and flexibility and stretching has become so important physically, but then the breathing and learning how to do that correctly and properly, it's really been great physically, but mentally as well. And so I teach yoga classes now, and those are probably one of the highlights of my week. It keeps me accountable by teaching it. But my people coming in, they don't realize how much it helps me too, because I'm just like, I need a little calm in my week or
Yep.
in my day. So that has definitely been something that has really been a newer thing that I've included just in the
Hmm.
past few years, but it has been so beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking about what you were saying too earlier about the additives, the different things that are a part of the processing,
Hmm.
that goes into the food and then goes into our bodies when we ingest it. um, I think for many people there is this assumption, or maybe even again deflating, of, well, it's in everything, so I can't avoid it, and I'm just going to have to deal with it. So with those things, what did you do to be able to reduce um, ingesting it, or maybe even take it out of your diet that you were eating?
Yeah. So I guess kind of a two-step or kind of two perspective approach. One thing that I love doing, I don't love cooking as much now. I think I've just kind of gotten tired of it, but I don't hate cooking, and there are times when I enjoy it. But one of the things about cooking that I love is to take a recipe that's not healthy and make it healthy. So
Mm,
learning how to find something that I enjoy and that I can cook that it's still quick and simple, but it doesn't have all the processed, foods and all, because most people, um, probably don't realize that it's really not that hard to swap some ingredients around and make something pretty close to what you would originally enjoy it like, but making
mhm,
it a little bit healthier. So that was one thing. I typically cook most of our meals anyway, and so if I'm gonna do that, then let's just make it healthier.
mhm,
And I feel like, that is something that people can do and still not be a slave to the kitchen. And that's one of the things that I love doing, in coaching with my clients, is helping them learn how to do that. But the other side of that is just knowing what is in our foods and choosing foods that have less. So, but also just knowing, because I feel like there's a difference in, I know that this food has sugar or whatever additives, and, but it is something that I'm not willing to give up. So I'm going to eat it every now and then. But I
mhm,
know what I'm doing. I know what I'm ingesting. And okay, I'm going to only have it for a holiday or whatever, versus, well, it's in everything. So I don't really care. And I'm going to eat something and I'm going to call it healthy just because it, says no sugar or low fat or whatever.
mhm.
So it really is that empowering of learning what's in what, and then knowing and choosing, sometimes it may just be like, okay, I don't want to eat that, but there's something else that's a little bit healthier that, it has sugar, but it has real sugar, or, it has honey, or something like that. So, trying to find something that is healthier. And I do feel like there are a lot more options out there now than we've probably ever had since processed foods. Um, and it takes a little bit of time to search and kind of invest in that, but it is an investment in your health.
Mhm.
And once you find it, then, you kind of spend that time on the front end, but then you can go through and shop and get your stuff. And it doesn't really take that much time once you begin learning.
Mhm.
So, cooking as much as I can, but then choosing that, if it's something that I just can't give this up, it's like, okay, well, let's just limit it, but let's know what I'm doing when I'm eating it.
Right,
Let's eat as
right.
much healthy stuff as I can around it, drink the water, flush it out, those kind of things. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I love me a donut. I'm not giving up donuts, but I also don't eat them very often anymore.
right,
So when I do, I go in knowing it's a donut, it's got all kinds of junk in it. I'm going to enjoy one.
right.
And then that's it. Right. So
Yeah.
I think that is a huge part of it, is just knowing what's in our food,
Mhm.
or food like substances, and making that intentional choice of, I'm gonna eat this, or I'm not gonna eat this, or I'm gonna eat less of this, or I'm going to substitute, right? I'm gonna make it, and I'm going to substitute a couple of things. So instead of using vegetable oil, you use a different kind of oil, or
Right.
whatever that might be. So yeah, I think there are many things that we can do, and that's the beautiful thing, again, of functional medicine, is
Mhm.
it's personalized.
Yeah,
You don't
absolutely.
you don't have to do what other people are doing. That may not work for you anyway.
Right.
So, you don't have to follow in somebody else's footsteps. It's not cookie cutter. Give it a try. If it doesn't work for you, try something else. And that's also the beautiful thing about coaching, is that when you have that support, you have somebody to bounce ideas off of, to ask questions, to have accountability, to provide resources, all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one thing, like you said, like the individual, because we're all at different places right now anyway. So it's kind of like, you don't have to go from here to there. It's like, what is just one thing that you can do to move you a little bit further on the path
Hmm.
based on where you are right now? Because, like you said, we are different. We're on different areas anyway. So, you know, not everybody can be here, but we can all take one little step forward. And I do feel like, yes, that's where those coaches come in. We as coaches, I mean, I feel like the coaching industry, while it is growing, I still feel like there's so much value in it that people haven't realized.
Hmm.
Because, I know for myself, when, just going through my separation, divorce, and even still, I still see a counselor who is a life coach. And now it is more life coaching and business coaching, but I still see a coach as a coach. And,
Hmm.
I think that is so key, because I see the benefit in what I do as a coach. And so I love going in and getting coached, and just that encouragement, just that no judgment zone, just that helping me think through things. Um, and so I do feel like there is, still a long way for the coaching profession to go, to really be valued, and seeing how much value that we have. And I do think a lot of people are seeing that, but I still think there's a long way to go. But yeah, I feel like, if some people could just see the benefit of, wherever you are now, having support along the way, I mean, that's golden.
Hmm. 100%. Well, Brigett, thank you so much for your time and sharing all of the details of your story. I know that there's going to be many people who can relate to that. So, if people have questions for you, they want to find out more, where can they go?
Yeah, so I am on Facebook and Instagram, and I also have a website. So my website is Experience Calm Coaching. So you can always find me there and reach me there. You can also join our Facebook group. We love having people come in and join the community, and that is Experience Calm Community. And then on Instagram, it's just my name, Brigett Buice. But if you type in Experience Calm Coaching, you should still be able to find me. It'll point you there, because I know sometimes it's hard to find my last name. So, but yeah, so I'm on all the social medias. I'm on YouTube as well, Experience Calm Coaching. So yeah, you can pretty much find me if you're trying to find me. You should be able to find me out there.
Well, cool. Well, I will make sure to put all of that information in the show description so folks can connect with you and follow you on social media. And for those of you that enjoyed this conversation, make sure you give it a like, uh, drop us a comment, and let us know what you took away from our talk today. And of course, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the combos. And until next time, I'll see ya. Bye.